The 1803 Louisiana Purchase doubled the size of the young American Republic, just 20 years after it won independence from Great Britain. Native American territory decreased as colonists moved westward. In the middle of the century, the concept of manifest destiny provided justification for further territorial expansion and encouraged pioneers to spread civilization across the entire continent. However, the slavery issue divided the nation. We have a 16-parts video series for you where we cover every aspect of the history of the United States. So make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on post notifications for future videos. Also, let us know in the comments below what do you think. And now, back to the video. In the second half of the 16th century, England resolutely turned its attention to the West, driven by ambitions of exploration, colonization, and economic expansion. This period marked the beginning of England's ventures into the New World, setting the stage for its future colonial empire. England's efforts were multifaceted, involving a combination of maritime exploration, attempts at establishing colonies, and the strategic use of its naval power. One of the earliest initiatives was England's quest for the elusive Northwest Passage. This sought-after route promised a shorter path to the wealth of China by navigating around the northern reaches of the American continent. Between 1576 and 1578, Martin Frobisher led 3 expeditions, braving the harsh and icy waters of the Arctic. His voyages were significant for their time, reaching the coasts of Baffin Island and making contact with the native Inuit populations. However, the persistent and formidable ice barriers ultimately thwarted Frobisher's efforts. A decade later, John Davis took up the challenge, leading 3 more expeditions between 1585 and 1587. Like Frobisher, Davis aimed to find the Northwest Passage, exploring further along the northern latitudes. He managed to navigate as far as the 73rd parallel north, but the ice again proved insurmountable, forcing his expeditions to turn back. Despite their failures to find a navigable passage, these early explorations laid important groundwork for future Arctic exploration and demonstrated England's growing maritime capabilities. Parallel to the search for the Northwest Passage, England sought to capitalize on the burgeoning cod fisheries of the North Atlantic. Cod fishing had become a lucrative industry, with numerous European ships frequenting the waters around Newfoundland. Recognizing an opportunity to exert control and profit from this trade, England aimed to establish a colony on Newfoundland. In 1583, Sir Humphrey Gilbert led a fleet of 5 ships to Newfoundland, landing in St. John's Bay. The harsh climate and limited resources quickly disheartened the settlers. After a brief and unsuccessful attempt to establish a foothold, they abandoned the colony. Tragically, Gilbert himself perished in a shipwreck during the return journey, marking a somber end to this early colonial venture. Undeterred by previous setbacks, England's ambitions turned towards establishing a colony directly on the American mainland. In 1584, Sir Walter Raleigh, under a royal patent from Queen Elizabeth I, initiated an expedition to the Outer Banks, an area now part of North Carolina. The site chosen was the island of Roanoke, strategically located away from Spanish-controlled Florida, reducing the risk of Spanish attacks. The first attempt to establish a colony on Roanoke occurred in 1585, with the construction of a fort. However, it wasn't until 1587 that a significant effort was made to populate the colony. That year, 110 settlers, including 18 women, arrived on the island. The colony was isolated, shielded from the sea by an offshore bar, and seemed a promising start for English settlement in North America. However, external factors soon conspired against the fledgling colony. The threat of the Spanish Armada, which aimed to invade England, diverted resources and attention away from Roanoke. Consequently, the colony was left without supplies for 3 years. When English ships finally returned in 1590, they found the settlement deserted. The only clue to the settlers' fate was the word Croatoan carved into tree trunks, referring to a nearby island and a Native American tribe. The mystery of the lost colony of Roanoke has never been resolved. Despite the failure of the Roanoke colony, England's efforts in the latter half of the 16th century were not in vain. The expeditions to the Northwest Passage, the brief settlement on Newfoundland, and the establishment of Roanoke were crucial learning experiences. They demonstrated England's determination and growing expertise in maritime exploration and colonization. Moreover, from the base at Roanoke, English explorers gained valuable knowledge of the Chesapeake Bay area. This region would later become the cradle of English colonies in North America. With the establishment of Jamestown in 1607, the lessons learned from these early ventures informed future colonial endeavors. setting the stage for England's eventual dominance in North America. The 17th century marked the beginning of a significant period in the history of North America, as England claimed the entire central area of the coast and named it Virginia. This chapter of colonization was pivotal, laying the foundational stones for what would eventually become the United States. It was characterized by daring ventures, harsh challenges, and the establishment of enduring economic and social structures. In 1606, King James issued a colonization charter that established two limited liability companies, the London Company and the Plymouth Company. These companies were tasked with establishing settlements in the New World. The London Company, more formally known as the Virginia Company of London, was the first to undertake the challenge. At the end of 1606, 3 ships, Susan Constant, Godspeed, and Discovery, set sail from England with approximately 100 men on board. Led by Commander Christopher Newport, the expedition arrived in Chesapeake Bay in April 1607. Newport chose a site approximately 70 kilometers inland along the banks of the James River, named in honor of the king. This site, Jamestown, was strategically chosen to be hidden from Spanish ships patrolling the coast from their bases in Florida. Despite its advantageous location, Jamestown faced immediate and severe hardships. The swampy, mosquito-infested environment led to widespread disease, and the settlers were ill-prepared for the harsh realities of their new home. The first years in Jamestown were brutal. The settlers struggled with starvation, disease, and frequent conflicts with the indigenous Powhatan Confederacy. By the end of the winter of 1609 to 1610, known as the Starving Time, the population had dwindled to about 60 survivors from the several hundred who had initially settled. A turning point came with the arrival of John Rolfe, who introduced a new variety of tobacco in 1612. This tobacco, which was more palatable to European tastes than the local variety cultivated by Native Americans, became a highly profitable cash crop. Tobacco farming quickly transformed the economic landscape of Virginia, leading to its moniker, Virginia's Gold. The relationship between the English settlers and the Powhatan Confederacy was complex and often strained. Initially, there were attempts at peaceful coexistence and cooperation. The marriage of John Rolfe to Pocahontas, the daughter of Chief Powhatan, in 1614, symbolized a brief period of peace and mutual benefit. Pocahontas, who converted to Christianity and took the name Rebecca, became an intermediary between the English and her people, helping to ease tensions. However, the rapid expansion of tobacco farming required more land, leading to increased encroachment on Powhatan territories. This expansion led to heightened tensions and ultimately to violent confrontations. On March 22, 1622, the Powhatan launched a surprise attack, killing 350 settlers, roughly a quarter of the English population in Virginia at the time. This massacre marked a significant turning point, leading to a relentless and often brutal suppression of the Powhatan people by the English. The massacre and the ongoing conflicts exposed the Virginia Company's inability to protect its settlers and maintain order. Dissatisfaction among the settlers grew, leading to calls for greater protection and stability. In response to these challenges and internal dissension within the Virginia Company, King James I dissolved the company in 1624. Virginia became a royal colony, directly governed by the English crown. Under royal control, the colony began to stabilize and grow. By 1650, the population of Virginia had risen to around 5,000 settlers. However, this growth came at a significant cost to the indigenous populations. Most of the Powhatan villages were destroyed, and their people were driven from their ancestral lands. The early history of Virginia is a story of resilience and adaptation. The settlers' ability to overcome severe hardships and establish a profitable economy based on tobacco farming laid the groundwork for the future prosperity of the colony. The social and political structures that emerged in Virginia, including the establishment of the House of Burgesses in 1619, the first representative legislative assembly in the New World, would become key elements of American governance. Virginia's early years also set the stage for complex and often tragic interactions between European settlers and Native American populations. The initial cooperation, followed by violent conflict and dispossession, would be a recurring theme in the expansion of European settlements across North America. Following the establishment of Virginia in 1607, England embarked on a grand colonial endeavor that spanned several decades and resulted in the formation of the 13 American colonies. These colonies, stretching from the cold coasts of New England to the warmer shores of Georgia, were founded for a variety of reasons, including economic gain, religious freedom, and strategic military positioning. Each colony developed its own unique identity and governance, contributing to the diverse mosaic that would eventually form the United States. In November 1620, the Mayflower, carrying about 100 Puritans seeking religious freedom, anchored at Cape Cod due to poor weather conditions. These settlers, known as the Pilgrims, established Plymouth Colony. Their settlement was one of survival and determination, characterized by the famous Mayflower Compact, a social contract for self-governance. The movement towards New England accelerated with the foundation of the Massachusetts Bay Colony. In 1629, King Charles I granted a charter to the Massachusetts Bay Company, led by Puritan John Winthrop. Winthrop and several hundred settlers founded Boston, which quickly became a major hub. Within a decade, nearly 20,000 Puritans had settled in Massachusetts, seeking a new life free from religious persecution. In 1632, Charles I granted a charter for Maryland to the Catholic noble family of Calvert. Maryland, like Virginia, became a colony of plantations. However, religious tensions between Catholics and Puritans often flared, impacting the colony's development. Political and religious discord in Massachusetts during the mid-1630s led to the creation of new colonies. Thomas Hooker founded Hartford, leading to the establishment of Connecticut. The settlers of Connecticut adopted the Fundamental Orders, considered by some to be the first democratic constitution in America. Roger Williams, a proponent of religious freedom, founded Providence, which later became the colony of Rhode Island. Rhode Island's policy of religious tolerance attracted Quakers, Dutch Jews, and other minorities, making it a haven for those fleeing religious persecution. The foundation of Portsmouth resulted in the creation of New Hampshire, built on lands previously conceded by the English crown. This colony, like its New England neighbors, grew out of the quest for economic opportunities and religious freedom. The territorial continuity between New England and the Chesapeake Bay colonies was disrupted by the Dutch presence in New Netherland, centered around the Hudson and Delaware rivers. In the 1660s, the English seized these territories. New Netherland was renamed New York in honor of the Duke of York. New Jersey and Delaware were also established during this period, contributing to the diverse and economically vibrant middle colonies. In 1681, William Penn, a Quaker aristocrat, received a charter for Pennsylvania. Penn's vision of a colony based on religious tolerance and fair treatment of Native Americans led to a unique and prosperous society. The Society of Free Traders, composed of several hundred investors, financed a fleet that brought settlers to Pennsylvania in 1682 and 1683. Penn's fair dealings with the Amerindians ensured a long period of peace, and the colony's fertile land attracted a diverse population. By the early 18th century, Philadelphia had grown to be the largest town in England's American colonies. In 1663, a group of 8 English aristocrats received a charter for the region named Carolina. The town of Charleston was founded in 1669, becoming a key port. However, the colony's growth was hampered by subtropical illnesses and conflicts with Native Americans. The introduction of African slave labor was instrumental in developing rice plantations, particularly in the marshy coastal areas. In 1712, the Carolina colony was divided into North Carolina and South Carolina. This division allowed for more focused governance and development, with South Carolina becoming a major center for rice and indigo production. The last of the 13 colonies, Georgia, was established in 1732 by King George II. Positioned south of the Savannah River, Georgia was strategically important for buffering Spanish Florida. The colony attracted a diverse group of settlers, including debtors and persecuted religious minorities, and it quickly became a vital part of the southern colonial landscape. The foundation of the 13 American colonies was a complex process driven by diverse motivations including economic opportunities, religious freedom, and geopolitical strategy, from the rocky coasts of New England to the fertile plains of the South. Each colony developed its own distinct identity and governance. These early colonies laid the groundwork for the cultural, economic, and political diversity that would define the United States. By the mid-18th century, these colonies were flourishing, setting the stage for the revolutionary events that would soon follow.